Hello, everyone. This is Political Chit Chat, and I'm your host, Gonzalo Duran. Today's honored guest is Brandon Castro. He's running for New York State Assembly District 30 in Queens. Brandon, thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Brandon, give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brandon Castro. I'm a candidate for State Assembly here in Queens. Well, not here, but back at home in Queens. That's going to be the communities of Woodside, Maspeth, Elmhurst, and just small portions of Jackson Heights there. But I come from, I was born and raised in Queens. I've been born and raised in Woodside basically my entire life. And then my family just recently had moved to Maspeth back in 2004. Recently, but time just flies by. But I am a product of the public school system. I am a product of the CUNY system. I graduated from Queens College back in 2023. I actually ran for this very same seat back in 2024. I got around 40%. We knocked on 19,000 doors, got around 12,000 votes, just a little bit over that amount, and we really gave it our all here. But what I saw for a long time was a lack of balance of dialogue. I know that that's something that you also talk about a lot too, trying to give a voice to what do you call it, like the voiceless, like people who really feel like they're not being heard. I saw that all of the time in college. I was there for around 6 years. I did a bachelor's in history and political science. And for such a long time, I saw that there were students who had conversations and they were wanting to talk about more, but then they were held back. And that's where I happened to come by. I had ran twice over there. I had lost, and then finally during that last year, which I wish I had just a little bit more time. That's when I saw that there was an opportunity. And we put our own people inside of the student government there, and then now the current student government president is still there. And so that just shows the impact that we have, whether it's on a local level, whether it's on through colleges or school, or even running for a statewide office here. So my goal is to obviously win. We've been building up bipartisan support. I'm the only candidate out of the 4 currently, including the 3 Democrats who has any in-district Democrat support, being endorsed by the former council member, Robert Holden. I've gotten involved in multiple campaigns. I've been involved in campaigns for both parties pretty much, mostly supporting more of like the moderate voices, more of the common sense, more of the conservative voices. And I've just had a great time doing it. I just always tell people, you live only one life. Life is far too short, and so it's just good to get involved in as many things as humanly possible. And I know that that's something that you are very, very good at. And so I am running a campaign on growing skills and jobs, changing the education system, and really trying to provide a real change here.
So let's back up a little bit because you mentioned the student portion of it.
Yeah.
Now, was it political science? What were you in college for at the time?
So I did a bachelor's in both history and political science.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now taking what you learned in political science, which I always criticize it a little bit because I never jumped into that field directly, but what you learned there, are you applying it in what you're doing now in the real world?
Surely, yeah. A lot of it has to do with studying not only policy positions, but having the conversations with people. Because college, I feel, or just growing up, is where you really learn your voice. Whether it's a 4-year liberal degree, doing just an associate's, anything. You learn how to talk, you learn how to make a case, and then doing that nonstop for basically 4, 5, 6 years, you really learn how to articulate, and you learn what you really believe in. There's people, whether they're on the left or right, but then they stay within their echo chambers there. And what I learned is to have the conversations with people. I never took offense to it. There's others that do, but I just learned that, hey, as long as we eventually find some sort of a common ground, or even if we don't, that's fine. That's totally fine. That's where most of us are at on a daily basis anyway. So.
And I like to think that if we could all do something similar to like that, we would live in a more prosperous society. But that's a different subject for a different time.
I agree.
Now, I want to backtrack a little bit more. You said 40%. Now, that was 40% on your first run?
Correct.
Now, just be very clear. That is an incredible number. For somebody on the first run to get in the 40s is, it's, right? There should be a parade for something like that on the other side. Give us a little bit of some knowledge on how do you think you got to that 40%?
Sure. Well, I had just learned, I haven't really been involved in politics for the longest time. Granted, I'm still 26, but it's really only been 5 or 6 years. Back at 2017, when my, at that point, council member, Robert Holden ran, his lawn signs were all over Maspeth. And I just told myself, at that point I was just graduating from high school, once I get older and once I can actually provide like actual support, I will do it. I will just make sure that he wins. And then eventually we got involved with in the Democrat primary for Councilmember Phil Wong. But, I'm starting to jump around a lot. But what I learned is that there's a lot of campaigns that don't know how to campaign. They don't have political flyers. They don't know how to summarize their policy positions, or it's a very negative campaign. It's always no, 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 no to this or no to that. Like, great, a lot of people are angry. A lot of people are mad. There's a lot of things that I am also mad about. There's a lot of things that I am also passionate. But we have to give voters a positive vision. And so at that point, I was during the presidential run. So everybody was talking about whatever's happening on the national level. So it's very hard for the local voices to break through. But what we learned is that we have to do the grassroots. We have to knock on doors. Our goal was 20,000, 25,000, 30,000. We were barely able to get the 19,000 doors. At that point, I was operating on a $10,000 budget. But I knew that, if I give it my best shot, and I'm not just saying that, I'm going to hope and pray maybe the trends are going to go in my way. I mean, like, knock on doors, attend every single meeting, get involved in multiple campaigns. I knew it was going to be like a long shot, especially running during a presidential year. Everybody votes. You walk just like across the street from you, somebody and their friends and friends and friends of family are going to vote. And so I knew that it was always going to be hard to reach every single person there, but we gave it our best shot. At that point, I was also endorsed by Bob Holden. We got that one quite late. That was closer to the end of the summertime, but now, we have a lot more support. It's more of like a bipartisan support. And I knew that those are the policy positions that we have to talk about. The world is so polarized now. Let's find things that we can agree on, things that are going to fix the city outside of whatever our parties are telling us to say.
And you make a perfect example. Bob Holden, who was a Democrat, and he was term limited, so he did his whole 3 terms. And he was supported by the Republican and the conservative parties in his campaigns, in his electoral, in his history. So it's a prime example that it can be done. And I believe he was one of maybe 3 or 4 elected officials that had cross-party endorsements all around. So it does happen, but it doesn't happen the other way around as often, that unfortunately. But hey, you never know. It could be happening soon. That being said, Brandon, now that you're here, you're running again for a different, or you're running for the same seat. What do you think is going to be different? What are you doing different?
Well, it helps that it's a lower turnout year. This is a gubernatorial year. What we think is going to be the one-on-one race against Hochul, against Bruce Blakeman. I've never seen Hochul as a turnout machine, but not even taking into account, because that's what people are saying about the 2025 race, but then Zoran got record-breaking numbers. So we don't really know. All that I know is that I've been there for years. I have been there for years. I'm the only one of the 4, again, that has a Democrat. That would be by the name of former council member Bob Holden. He's the only one that's been endorsing so far. I'm sure that wave of support is going to also be coming in, but we have been there for years. I'm the only one that has any influence or a base in like the Maspeth area, in the Southern Elmhurst area. They're all up in like the Woodside and in the Jackson Heights portion, where all of the progressives, the transplants, a lot of like the liberal politics are. And I've done my fair share there too, but they never come down to where a lot of us are here just advocating for safer streets, better quality of life, lowering the cost of living, which everybody's talking about now too. But when we talk about that, we want to double down when it comes to lowering the taxes, And, they never really show us support here, and I'm the only one that really has influence there. I've gotten involved in multiple campaigns, all in district campaigns. Ramses Frias, who ran for City Council District 25, John Healy, who ran for City Council District 26, Phil Wong during his Democrat primary, which he won. He was up against a $1.2 million backed union machine by the name of Dermot Smith. He had every single Democrat, every single union, minus like a handful. And that was kind of like a death sentence. If you're getting involved in something like that, people will be like, why even bother? You are going to lose. But no, we just stuck it out. Phil Wong won the Democrat primary with support from also Bob Holden. We got involved in that campaign, and those are all within the Assembly District. And so we've really gotten involved knocking on doors for both parties, and we're just talking about common sense policy. moderate policies, stuff that everybody can agree upon here, whether it's somewhere on Jackson Heights, we want like a safer street here. Maspeth, we want just a better quality of life here. Woodside, they want better access to parks, and so on and so on and so on. There's a lot of things that I'm sure that I could talk to people, regardless of left or right, that that's what our campaign is all about here. It's going to be more of a fusion campaign, attracting the independent Democrats, the independent conservatives, anyone who feels marginalized by either the national party or even the local party here. We want to be that bridge. And when people vote, we're going to be, I think, number 6. People voting for governor, comptroller, attorney general, and so on and so forth. So when people vote, they'll be like, oh, I've seen this guy. He's not really, hardcore this or that, but just cares about our community first. And that's where we're really going to win by. That's how we are going to win. Building a coalition from the North versus South Queens, having the Democrat support to do it, and then branching on toward the northern area, which we're always going to be struggling in. But I'm here for everybody. It's not just for one person, whether it's Hispanic, Chinese, white, black. We're here to support everybody. And that's where I feel like that's the message that we have to actually win. And I feel very strongly about it.
Now, strategically speaking, that's a great, format that you have right there.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have a lot of things going on this year. We have the tensions across the country. We have the midterm elections, which is, it comes up to who's going to be running, who's leaving, et cetera. And you made some excellent points, and you threw some names out there that were great. Phil Huang, that race got really nasty towards the end.
Yeah.
If you guys can check out the Queens Chronicle and stuff like that, we're talking about, manipulation of leases and stuff like that. But Phil kept trucking, and he won his seat, and he showed there can be a huge change. Last year, on top of that, the Republicans had a primary for the, I believe there was a comptroller, which is something that doesn't normally happen. So is this year going to have any big, hiccups or insights that's going to happen? We're going to find out. We're going to find out what's going to happen. Now, you gave us your strategic plan. Now, what are the policies that you're focused on for the people so that they can know why they should be running for you?
Sure. Well, we have a very primary campaign, very bipartisan campaign topics: growing skills and jobs. That means providing people an easier pathway to get their dreams. A lot of people, when I graduated in 2023, there was so friends that I have within a year or 2 years after that couldn't really find jobs. They had to stick with, not that there's anything wrong with, finding like a bottom of the barrel job, or everybody has to earn their way in. There's nothing wrong with that. But, they had worked for 4 or 5 years, and then, all that experience, everything that they were trying to target vanished like that. And so, there's a lot of skills that people need. Growing skills and jobs is something that not only me, but the future and the current generations are actively talking about. That's partly, I think, the reason why Zoran won, because he was one of the only ones of those 3 candidates, at least at the end of the year, that actually talked about what the younger people are actively going through. We're being born and raised here, being sold a dream, being sold, get this 4-year degree, get this 5 or 6-year degree, and then, it's a lot of it's just wasteful classes that somebody could say that you might need those classes, but I know half of them you really don't, and then they expect you to pay so much money. Financial aid really does help, but there's a lot of people who don't have that support, and there's a lot of people that are in debt. They're in not only a credit card debt, they're in a college debt. And, that's not just a CUNY problem or a SUNY problem. That's just an everybody problem. Everybody's going through that. And they don't really have the skills necessary, regardless of that, to actually compete. And so that's something that I want to address by having an education reform platform, talking about investing into career development programs, vocational training programs, trade schools, these things that the future needs to actually survive. If not, then the cost of living is just going to keep on going up. Quality of life probably going to keep on going down. Housing prices are probably going to stay here, maybe gradually go down. But if we're going in the way that we are going now, well, then they're not going to be able to pay for the quality of the infrastructure and the housing there. And so that's also going to go down, and everything's just going to topple, and we're just going to keep on getting worse and worse. We cannot buy homes. We cannot afford the cost of living here. We're being told to follow this or follow that, listen to these people who don't know what we are going through here. And so we really need that voice, and regardless of the type of party, it's just all about how can you help me? And that's what I want to answer to people. How I can help you is to provide that alternative future that our generations need now, regardless if you're 26, 16, 36. We're all going through very similar stuff, or are going to be going through similar things, and we're all going to end up there where we're struggling to find a place to live. We're struggling to eat. We're struggling to really get the opportunities to make our voices heard. And the infrastructure piece, and that all lays into that too. We're an infrastructure first campaign. I always say build smart, build safe. That means we need smarter housing policies. We want to build safer infrastructures that lead to safer transit, safer trains, safer buses. But, everybody talks about the housing. We definitely need it. But the problem is that the conversation shifts so far there is that, okay, where's the talk about the infrastructure? Mass Beth, we often go through flooding. There's going to be lines waiting for people that want to take the bus over there. There are no trains over there. There's plenty of space for cars and such, but there's infrastructure problems that we need. You build a single housing unit somewhere. Well, that puts a further strain on the resources that we have. That involves flood-proof systems, stormwater systems. And what's going to end up happening is that the conversation will shift so far here, where we're all going to end up here. What we want is to really put not brakes to that, but hey, this is what we're going through now. We have many different types of communities that need the infrastructure, including populated density places like here. We need better infrastructure here. Where's the conversation on that? That's where the conversations are going to be headed toward. But we want to talk about that now. Let's address those problems now, and then we could talk about housing. I'm more than happy to talk about building more, but where's the space? And then they want to take apart some of the homes that we have here, or at least have the authority to, take apart some of the single-family homes. Well, we want to improve what we have here so that people don't move, and that's a primary tenet of our campaign, along with other things like improving the quality of life, supporting our cops, supporting our police, so that we improve not only the quality of life but the public safety there. It all just blends in together on a community-first campaign. And I'm going to be the one to build that bridge to people. There's a lot of people motivated. They want to vote against Trump this year. They want to vote against the GOP. They want to vote against the establishment party that promised them all of these goods, and then they force us to support them or tell us, hey, you have to vote. Okay, we vote. Where are the promises? Where's all these things that are supposed to be working for us? Okay, but there's a lot of people that were also sold that false promise by Zoran. So there's a lot of people voting. Who are voting. He only got 50.3%. People are saying he won in a mandate. Okay, great. Let's say that he did. Well, then that coalition of support that he had is going down below the 50% margins, and that's where we have to come in. The Democrats are going through their own public battle. It's the DSA versus the establishment. DSA versus the conservative Dems. Okay, they're having this active battle going on. It's not an actual battle, but they're going to have their primaries. Western Queens is being invaded by the DSA there. Aside from my seat here, everywhere in the western and kind of the northern portions, all DSA candidates, or at least DSA sympathizers, that means the socialists, or DSA dues paying members there. And so my campaign will be one of the only ones that actually stands a chance, because we have support from the southern areas, which are just kind of telling us, hey, we want some common sense. And the northern areas are telling us the same thing. The problem is that, do we knock on those doors? No. Do we talk to them? No. Do we just say, we don't want this, we don't want that, we want USA? Well, how are they going to vote for us? How are they expected to vote for us if we don't have that inspiring vision forward? So that's where I'm really hungry to tackle those voters that don't like the national environment now, but they don't like the way that the Democrat Party is also headed toward. And New York City is the face of that. So this is where we come in. The common sense candidates, the common sense platforms, gathering all this coalition, the people that voted for Cuomo, the people that voted for Curtis. They're not just going to go away. They're going to keep on coming back, and they're hungry for that change. And this is where we come in. Fusion campaigning, coalition building, and getting our base to come out along with the others that don't like the national party. They don't like the local parties here. So where do they have to go to? They're going to go to my campaign, and they're going to be voting for me this year.
Well, the passion is there, no doubt about that. And you hit on a tremendous amount of topics. We talked about the education reform. I think we're solid there. You mentioned the DSA, and for those that may not know, the Socialists of America. Now, for me personally, when I look at it, and the way I look at the political system right now for New York, it's not Democrats versus Republicans right now. It's DSA versus Democrats. And the Democrats progressive that gave the DSAs those leniencies to get them in power is now fighting to keep power because, you know, they were the organizers, they were the face of that person for many years, and now they're trying to, you know, hold on to, or one side is taking over, the other one's trying to hold off. And you can see across the board, I think it's like over 11, maybe up to 22 Democrats that are not seeking re-election this year across the country because the DSAs are taking pretty much those seats, and they don't want the competition or to lose that you know, badly. You know, you got that side of it, and you know, you mentioned the parts where let's say the GOP, the Trump, and the supporters for Silva and Cuomo. Obviously, they do have to go somewhere, and they're looking for now whether they're looking for different clubs, outside organizations, but they're also looking for different candidates. But getting to them, that's a hard and difficult thing. Obviously, you just hit, you know, many different topics that they are concerned about, what they want. What do you think would be, I guess, maybe your way of saying, you know, vote for me and this is why, to those individuals that are looking for a place to go or a new face to look at?
Well, I'm not bought and paid for. You know, all of the donations that we have comes from the local community, comes from people that not only live in Queens, but that also live here. We are not bought and paid for. We are a coalition campaign. You know, people are going to look when they vote. The number one question that I get: are you a Democrat? Are you a conservative? Are you left? Are you right? Well, there's a lot of things that I agree on both sides. You know, I come from Queens. I don't come from Oklahoma. I do not come from Texas. So when we campaign and when we talk to people, it's just all about the local issues first. And you know, then I tell them, and they actually like what I have to say. I don't like how we're going. I don't like how the country's going. There's a lot of things that I do support. There's a lot of things that I don't, you know. But we have to be able to criticize, because if we don't, well, we end up being our hacks. And I'm the farthest thing from that. I am not a hack for either party in any way, shape, or form. I criticize on a daily basis. You know, even if I'm talking to my own people, I'm like, why don't we talk more about this? Why don't we do this more? But people really like that I have a positive message. You know, we want to provide a better future for not only the people of Queens, but I want this to be the safest, the strongest, the most affordable assembly district. You know, we have a lot of different types of communities here. It's a very interesting one. It's the most diverse assembly district. We have many different types of communities there, and it's like a mix between homeowners coming from the south portion and a lot of renters. So where do you really go? You know, do you have to more campaign on like the fragile end? But all that I tell people, I'm a common sense candidate. I support smart housing policy. I am, you know, if people want to call me a pro-housing candidate, I'm not against that. Yes, I am. I'm an infrastructure candidate. I support the infrastructures that we have here. So that's a pro-housing candidate. Call me that too. But there's a lot of things that we agree upon, and that, you know, neither of the party platforms I really think about are talking here. The Democrats have a script. People often ask. I was asked multiple times, by the way, why don't you just change party? It'll be so much easier. Why don't you get involved? This is an open seat. Now, even when I was contemplating running, Stephen Raga, the incumbent, the one that I ran against in 2024, was still there. And when I say I got countless calls, I mean countless people telling me to switch. There was people meeting with me, people having lunch with me, asking for me to switch. But I told them what my platform is, what my plan is, and that we know where the future of the Democrat Party is going now. New York City is the guinea pig for that, and it seems to be working for them. It's going the progressive, the populist, arguably populist, but socialist route. And so where's there room for us on either of them? That, and also, if you get involved in the Democrat primary, I know many, many others who have tried for countless years to win a Democrat primary. They always end on June 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, whatever the primary date is. They never see the light of day beyond that. And so they eat their own. You know, they always tell us, why don't you get involved in politics? They're going to shake my hand, give me the brightest smile of all time. And then if I want to run, they're going to spit and chew me out. They're going to spend hundreds and thousands. They're going to slander your name. They're going to try to make sure you don't have any influence in the local politics. And they are just as corrupt as ever. Not that both parties are not, but we live in New York City. We live in Queens, where I have a pathway where, hey, I don't just have to, you know, what do you even call that? I'm trying to find the best way of saying this, but play along just to get along. You know, I can do that too. If I'm speaking to a constituent, speaking to somebody that lives there, I'm going to listen to them all day. If they want to talk to me for 2 hours, I'll be the first one there. But if it's like one of the higher ups telling me that I have to do this, follow this script, follow that, no, you know, so I don't have a script. I care about the community first. I care about the people. When we are a people-powered campaign, everybody says that, but we're actually real because we come from the people there. People on our team live there. And that's the pitch that I have to people. We need change, and everyone likes change. Everybody campaigns on change, but then they realize they fall from the very same system, and then once they get entrenched in there, nothing really gets done. This is a two-party state. This is a two-party country, and there's one pathway forward.
Well, thank you, Brandon, for mentioning that. And you hit a pretty hard topics. It's something that a lot of people shy away from, which I appreciate you bringing up. And, you know, those type of subjects, we're going to have you on another time so we can go more depth into those. But for now, would you tell the people if they want to, you know, volunteer with you, get to know you, maybe help you out, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social media, Brandon Castro NY. I think that's my very same platform from X, Twitter, and including TikTok. Well, I call them both the same thing. Instagram as well. We try to post every day. We always talk about the local politics, who I am, and what this campaign is all about too. And if you want, you can check out my website, castroforqueens.com. There's ways to volunteer, a little bit about me there too. We're going to have the website formally published, but if you were to check that out, it's just a link for you to get involved with us.
Well, thank you, Brandon, for being. And for those out there, I want to say thank you so much for being with us. I want to say also thank you to our executive producer, Gary Lutz. And until then, and as always, God bless you and God bless America.